Hey everyone, welcome back to Careers at the End of the World. It's me, Jenn, your host, and I'm going to do something a little different today. And this is truly something that people have asked for, and I feel a little strange talking about this because ever since I started Work Wonders over 10 years ago, I really felt strongly that I wanted to stick to the facts, stick to the best practices, focus on the things that we can control. I really value being very, very practical. Okay. That's one of the reasons our clients get results is like we're very focused on taking consistent strategic action. And I think if you had told me 10 years ago that sure, Jenn, you're going to get to work for yourself and have a business and make it work, but also you're going to have to do that through a Donald Trump presidency, a pandemic, and maybe another Donald Trump presidency. I like to think that I would have shown myself some grace back then because the last few years have been a freaking doozy for people. The same old coping strategies are just not holding up like they used to. And on top of that, for me personally, as I've talked about here, I've been struggling with some health stuff for the last couple of years, and I've just had to really rethink the degree to which I can be a little worker bee. I've had to nurture other parts of myself. I've had to work less. And so I have found myself doing things I wouldn't normally do. It's the form of self-care. Doing things I wouldn't normally do and also encouraging other people to do these sorts of things. I mean, look, the podcast is called Careers at the End of the World, right? So I wanted to share because I have been asked by many clients what I do for self-care in these moments. And I'm not positioning self-care as the only thing we need. We need a lot of collective work. We need a lot of things. So I don't think these sorts of self-care tactics I'm going to share are solutions for everything that's going on right now. I don't even think they're going to be silver bullets for people's job searches. But for me, what they've enabled me to do is to persevere and sustain myself. And I think that's the crux. That's the foundation, right? Is being able to do that and having resources and practices that help enable that. Because if we don't have that, we certainly don't have a job search. I don't have a business. So I've had to figure out how to do that, how to dig a little deeper. And I want to share some things today because clients have asked, what are you doing? I beat around the bush a little bit. I'm like, oh, have you tried blah, blah, blah? And people are like, just tell me what you're doing. So I want to share a little bit about what I'm doing. And if you're like, wow, this Jenn girl losing it a little bit, that's okay. That's a fair takeaway. I did, and I am in some ways. But something that's really important to me and really important to my work, to my life, is I, A, don't believe the pandemic is over. And B, I think I'm forever changed by the experience of working and living through that and spending so much time helping people work through that. And I know that the cool thing to do is to move on with life as if that didn't happen, as if it doesn't exist anymore. I am just unable and quite frankly unwilling to do that. And it really felt to me like we had some moments during the pandemic where things like paid sick leave really had a moment, where Medicare for all had a moment, where racial justice had a moment. And for me, it just really going, quote unquote, back to normal was just not something I was willing to do. I was not willing to go back and consume and spend money at the same types of places, at the same types of way. For me, that has helped me cope. It's helped me cope tremendously to not pretend that everything is normal. I have 2 sociology degrees, so I can read the room really, really well in terms of what's happening. And trying to gaslight myself about where we're at collectively is not healthy for me. It's not that I don't have moments of joy or that I can't compartmentalize long enough to enjoy myself. It's just that I can't do that for very long. I can only do it for really short periods of time. It helps me to take it all in. And I don't think when I look out at the world and I look at other people, like, I don't know that that's normal. But it is, in fact, where I'm at. And it is also, in fact, why I rebranded around things being at the end of the world, because as someone who is not pretending or willing to think about going back to normal, I know that other people know that deep down too. Deep down inside, people know that something really fundamentally shifted over the last few years, and we're living through just a period of massive upheaval that's a long time coming. And it's running in the background, but a lot of people are distanced from it or try to distance themselves from it. And so I think the first thing that I just want to say is, like, I'm coming from the perspective of not doing that. I'm mired in it. And in part that's because I see clients who have long COVID. I see people who send their kids to daycare and their kids are sick for months at a time. As someone who works so closely with people day in and day out, like pretending that COVID didn't fundamentally change things, or things weren't changed by that period of time and people's, I don't know, behavior during that time, is just not true for me. And I think it's a little bit of a pathway into what I'm about to share now, because all of these things that I'm about to share are really related to how I needed to resource myself to move through these moments where my perspective is so different from everyone else's. If you're listening to this, you know I'm very into astrology. Astrology was like the gateway drug to the rest of this. But I have found tremendous strength and purpose and direction using astrology and tuning into the natural world. And that is something that's really fundamentally shifted things for me. So instead of planning really around like quarters and months, like, I do a lot of planning around astrological transits, moon cycles. And that has really helped me a lot, actually. So that is one thing, and I've hinted at that and talked about that at a higher level, but I do think that astrology like underpins this. And as someone who's really not outdoorsy, like, I live in the city, my idea of outdoors is there's like a gorgeous bike path, but it's like paved. Like, I'm not hiking out in the woods. I don't have I don't have any outdoor space that's like ours. So I'm an indoorsy witchy girl. And astrology is a great way to connect with the natural world, because I can look at it on a screen on my computer or on my phone and not have to necessarily like be out in the wilderness, which is really just not my preferred place to be. If I'm going to be an outdoorsy girl, I'm going to be an outdoorsy girl at the beach. And so through looking at my own natal chart, one thing about me, I don't know if anyone here is as into astrology as I am, but I have a couple of placements in my first house which is the house of identity, that are probably pretty telling, if you do know astrology. So I have Pluto and Saturn in my first house. I'm not going to like go into like all of like what that might mean about me, but they're very serious planets. They're very, very serious planets. I'll say that much. And it led me to read a book called Healing Pluto Problems. And so Pluto energy just broadly is like very Martian. It's very like Scorpio, and it's the furthest away, right? So it has this distance, but it also really represents themes of like death and rebirth and transformation. And it's the first planet right in my chart is Pluto, followed by Saturn, which is the planet of discipline and structure. And I actually really, really resonate with that Saturn energy. I think I am very disciplined. I am very structured. If you work with me, I think you probably sense that. Like, I'm very good at like breaking things up and doing things bit by bit and being very consistent. And I've struggled, I think, with the Pluto piece, because I mean, if you like things to be consistent, you don't like them to die and be reborn all the time, which is what that Pluto stands for, right? And it can really represent. And so this book called Healing Pluto Problems, which is about dealing with the energy that comes with like very strong Pluto energy. A lot of my clients have strong scorpionic energy. So I have a ton of clients who are Scorpio risings, which is very similar to having Pluto in the first house. I have a lot of clients who have, in fact, I have several clients who have Scorpio stelliums in the sixth house, which I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with that energy. If you know, you know. But it's a very difficult energy. It's a very sensitive, you're very perceptive. You're overthinking things, yes, but like I also think you're overfeeling things. You're feeling more than the average person. You're taking a lot in, and it's very difficult energy. And I'm sharing all of this because if that's you, if you have even these Scorpio placements, Scorpio moons, check out Healing Pluto Problems. I've recommended it to almost everyone. But this is a very long way of getting to my first recommendation, which actually came from that book, which is Flower Essences. The author of the book talks a lot about why flower essences work, and I don't make flower essences, so I'm not going to go into all of that. But I will say I have a friend who makes flower essences and who offered to make me a custom batch. And I have them literally sitting on my desk. I use them all the time. And it's really, really helped me to have this little concoction made for me. And I think it's what it gives me. And I think, the crux of the book that talks about the importance of flower essences for like Plutonian and Scorpionic energy, is that it helps. It helps with fortitude. Let's say that. And I'm going to link to my friend Maureen Clancy. She is a therapist and she also makes her own flower essence blends. I'm going to link to her page so that you can grab some if you want. I love working with them. I love using them. Another thing that I'm taking is a potion by Dory Midnight, and it is Apocalypse Potion. And I will also link to that. I actually have had this for about a year, and I also swear by this. So if you are someone feeling like very overwhelmed by things that are going on in the world and like a lack of control and isolation or overwhelm, please check out the Apocalypse Potion by Dory Midnight. It is a great supportive antidote, literally. I take it regularly. Okay, so those are two things. They're on my desk. And I swear by them and recommend them all the time. It also really helps me knowing that there's a market for something like an Apocalypse Potion. If you are someone very sensitive to these things, you're not alone, right? There's people buying Apocalypse Potion. I'm sure it's not just me. Another thing that's really helped me is thinking about maintaining my own energetic hygiene. I spend most of my weeks talking to people in distress, talking to people going through very challenging times in their lives. And I have to make sure that like I'm not carrying that around with me all the time. Having some energetic cleansing as part of my daily and weekly routines is really, really important to me. There's a few different things that I do. And also I should just say, I don't think client work is the only way energy comes into my house. I think a lot about the media I consume, what I'm listening to, what I'm watching. Am I watching news? And I honestly don't watch that much news anymore. I used to sort of have it on in the background as I was like editing resumes, and I don't really do that anymore. Having a meditation practice actually really helped with that. Most people I know don't consume news as much as I did anyway, so you might already be on top of that. I also use selenite, which is a cleansing crystal. It's also very inexpensive and, as I understand, like very sustainably sourced. And so I keep some of that on my desk. I have it in my office, and I have like selenite wands. If you Google selenite wands, you'll see. And I use that regularly. I often have it between me and my computer, my desktop, and I also sometimes I have a boundary. It's called Boundaries in a Bottle. It's also by Dory Midnight. I love Dory Midnight potions and sprays. So I'll link to their website so you can check that out. So at the end of every week, I do the boundaries in a bottle spray so that when I come back on Monday, the space is clean for me. You can also do things, and I often do. Sometimes I just open the window and I just let fresh air in. I will also sometimes do things like light incense and cleanse the space that way. It just really helps me to make sure that my energy is mine. Um, because sometimes we pick up each other's energy, right? Like I mean, I've had a lot of difficult conversations and there's a lot of difficult news coming through. And so I just like to moderate that with cleansing ritual. This is a total aside, but we watched a horror movie a few weeks ago and I did a cleansing ritual after that as well. The more I meditate, the more sensitive I get to media. And so the more cleansing I think feels helpful to do. Physically cleaning your space can also be very helpful. And I do try to, especially my work area, tidy that up at the end of the week. I do have an end of the week ritual, and then I use everything else on an as needed basis because it's just something I take seriously. And I think is really helpful. If you are interviewing for jobs and you are taking in the energy of interviewers, or you're trying to like read into every little comment that they're making, like it might be helpful to do some cleansing work and just really sit with yourself. Cleansing helps me do that. Otherwise, I think I just have too much going on in my head to figure out what belongs to me, what's going on here, what stress is mine. Another thing that's very, very helpful, I've said meditation. I do have like a much stronger meditation practice that is very reliable to me. I'm not going to assume that meditation is something that's good for you, but it has been very helpful for me. I do best with guided meditations. Like it helps me to have a voice. Otherwise, my mind wanders. So, Spotify has a bunch. So if you have Spotify, you can check out what's there, but there's also a ton on YouTube. And that's just helped tremendously also in like managing my responses to things, like having a greater awareness over, again, like what's my energy. I will say up until about a year ago, probably like 11 months ago, I was not someone who could meditate. So it really took things going off the rails for me to be able to like sit and learn how to do this. I find that using a lot of visualizations is also something that's helpful. So in addition to meditation and guided meditations, I really like doing visualization exercises. For me personally, I've been doing some of the ones that are in the Healing Pluto Problems book. And if you're one of my clients who's told me about your Pluto placements, you would probably do well checking that book out. I find visualizations actually super helpful. And that is something I've been doing more and more of as well. Tarot is also, I used to read tarot in college. And then I like sort of like picked it up every now and then. But I've really gotten right back into it. And I'm going to say one of my favorite things about tarot is, so there's two things that tarot does for me. Maybe three things. Three things tarot does for me. One, it gets me off a screen. It's an analog activity. And I honestly think there's just tremendous value in that because I have all kinds of decks, not just tarot decks. I have oracle decks. I have a Britney Spears oracle deck that I love. I have There Are No Coincidences, that oracle deck, which I also love. I have Letting the Shadows. It's a shadow work deck with prompts on them, exercises, prompts, questions, that sort of thing. And all of them are tremendously helpful. So if you don't want to learn to read tarot, like I don't think that's required to benefit from using decks. Getting offline and doing something in an analog way that requires self-reflection and peace and like pause on external influences, I find tremendous value in that. Anything that gets me offline and keeps me entertained is a go in my book for the most part. Using tarot reminds me how important questions are. And on a very regular basis, when I'm working with clients, I will often say things like, let's ask a different question. Because one thing I know as a social science researcher is that the questions we ask entirely frame the answers we're going to get. Questions matter tremendously. So when I use tarot, which I often do in hard moments to pull myself out of, a stress spiral, I'm reminded that I better ask a good question. I better ask a valuable question, not like, oh, is this it? Is this the end? Which is for some reason my go-to question. I want to ask better questions. I want to ask questions that are helpful. An example of that is I will ask my tarot deck to show me something I'm not seeing in this moment. Can you give me context? What am I not paying attention to that I should be? Is actually a question I ask my tarot deck a lot. And that's really helpful. And I think even if you don't have a deck, pausing and thinking about that question really creates a lot of space for possibility. So that's probably the most common question I ask my tarot deck at this point. So if something bad is going on in the world, you can probably just know that I'm over here with my deck shuffling to be like, what am I not paying attention to that I should? And I also find that when I use it well and I ask good questions, tarot is a tool that allows for transformation. Like it facilitates my own transformation in those moments because instead of being in a stress spiral, I'm getting new information. I'm having a new perspective on things that allows me to move through stressful moments with greater resource, if that makes sense. So instead of, my default voice, which is like, is the world going to end? Which is not a good question and also not what is happening. I'm saying, what am I not paying attention to that I should be? And I can be like, yes, no, I can see that. That makes sense. Which just gives me like a different way to think about things in the moment that allows me to not gaslight myself, but add some depth to my thinking and ground my thinking in something other than fear and panic. I also use a lot of candles, herbs, oils. Sometimes I make them, sometimes I buy them, but I do a lot of work in that realm. And I'm comfortable considering that witchcraft, but I don't think you need to be calling yourself that or identifying with that to benefit from some of these practices. I have oils that are for, I've purchased oils. I've actually purchased oils for employment. And I use that a lot in my work, given the work that I do with clients. I sometimes recently I've started lighting employment candles before I give my webinars or before I do group calls. I have a lot of crystals. I think there's a lot of natural resources that can be very supportive and grounding and restoring and energizing, or just depending on what you need, that are all around us. And I do really encourage people, if you've ever had a cup of chamomile tea because you've had a long, stressful day, that's a good example of what might work here. There is something very powerful and transformative about working with herbs, oils, candles, crystals. That's very helpful for me in these moments. And that might be more than some of you want to do. But based on my conversations with clients, this is something people are doing and just talking about that much. Almost everyone I know has a crystal. Almost everyone I know would totally light a candle that was spelled, or prayer candles, like whatever. I sometimes just think of these things as like helping us hold our intentions and goals in a time when it's like really hard to do that, right? If you're struggling to stay focused for whatever reason, for me, it's just collapse. But for you, it could be anything. I find it really, really helpful. And again, going back to tarot, one of the reasons I find this so helpful is it gets me offline. It's a digital detox in many ways. Herbs, oils, candles, crystals have been a very helpful resource to bring in the energy that I need in any given moment. I tend to run at a pretty high level energetically. So sometimes what I really need is things that are grounding. Or if I'm in a moment where oh God, the news is freaking terrible and I've got a week full of client calls, then I will probably take something that is grounding, helps me operate from a place of personal power. I've been doing a lot of personal power work. Maybe if there's interest, that's another episode. But these things have just really helped me to exercise my power. And whether you want to think of it as herbalism or folk practices or witchcraft or just a fun little hobby, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to say that it's been very helpful for me to get myself offline, to be working and thinking with my intentions and using everything I can to support myself in that process so that I can continue to exercise my power and my agency in a world where I think the world would prefer we largely didn't do that. So um, that is what I have been doing. I will put some links in the show notes of like some apothecaries is some place that I like to shop, and I'll share some of my favorite things. But I do love working with herbs. I do love working with candles. I do a lot of intention candles and spell work around candles personally, and I like to combine that with herbal work. I use oils every single day. I do make some of my own stuff, and I also purchase some of my own stuff, I purchase other people's stuff, I should say. I love, love, love to make stuff. Like I do think it's such a good way to kind of get out of your head and into your body and offline, um, to make a candle, make an intentional candle. I have some clients who call it a prayer candle. I don't care what you call it. I just think it's very powerful to be accessing these resources to help expand the capacity for your work in these areas of your life, like for your intentions. So it's forced me to kind of get clear. It's forced me to deal with my fears head on. And it's also given me a lot of avenues to channel that and transform it into some other kind of energy, to give it a job to do that I think is really, really powerful. So I don't know if people want to hear more about that, but let me just say this. I do really like candle magic. Even if you are just using color magic with candles, I think that's like super powerful. So using black candles to like absorb negativity. Sometimes in the winter when it's too cold to leave my windows open, I will light a black candle. You can light a white candle for purification or like a fresh start, a red candle for attraction, a green candle for money. You can use, if you have another color that you associate with money culturally, you can use that. But I love to work with color in that way. I also work a lot with the days of the week and planetary hours. So you may or may not care about that, but one of the things about astrology that's so helpful is it's the seasonality of things. Like, and it's a reminder that not every day is the right time to do something, even if you want to do something, and that your energy will be amplified, right? If you align it appropriately. And you can think about doing that with planets and the days of the week and the hours of the day. But you can also think about that with just like your own energy levels and your different kind of commitments to yourself. The repetition, and so you can Google like planets, planetary hours, planetary days of the week. But because I'm very into astrology, like anything to do with planets works for me. And the planets and the days of the week and the color pieces are very simple ways to honor and amplify your intentions, even when times are tough. So if you haven't dabbled in that, maybe give it a dabble. It's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I find it really helpful. We're looking for ways to amplify and make the most of our efforts. And for me, these are some of the ways that I'm doing it. Like I said, none of it's a silver bullet, but as a coping strategy, as a way of tapping into your personal power and sustaining yourself in difficult times. There's a lot that you can do. If any of this sounds interesting and you want to hear more, please let me know that. I am going to have some robust show notes to some of my favorite places. I'm going to link to my friend Maureen, who makes the flower essences. I do think that is super useful. I'll link to Dory Midnight's website, and I'll throw in a couple of my other favorite stores there and some decks that I like. So you can check those out, take it or leave it. There's no pressure. But it's really helped me, and I get the sense that this kind of practice is helping a lot of people right now. And I think we can all agree we could use all the help we can get from now until at least November, and I assume beyond November as well. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for indulging me. If you listen this far, I really appreciate it. And if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to find me over on Instagram. I'll talk to you soon.